In this 3-minute video, you are going to learn how to create a storyboard for making a Google Lit trip. The secret to making a great Google Lit trip is to have a plan. After you have selected an appropriate book and have read it thoroughly, you will need to decide how to break the book down into a series of places where you want your students to visit. For this tutorial, I'm going to use a book about Johnny Appleseed. As you can see, I have created an outline of what I plan to include in my Google Lit trip. First, I determined where to start my journey. I had to do some research on the internet to find appropriate locations to match each of the spots I want my students to visit. I read in my book that Johnny Appleseed was born in Leominster, Massachusetts. I played around with this location on Google Earth and found that current-day Leominster is surrounded by apple orchards. A quick Google search for an apple orchard near Leominster resulted in many to choose from. It was not so important that I locate the exact farm where Johnny Appleseed was born and raised. In fact, doing so would be impossible. Instead, I found a suitable farm that could act as a substitute. That's how I came up with 38 Eldridge Road. Next, we visit 1125 Pleasant Street. This is Johnny's favorite place, as close as I can recreate. And in the story, I learned that Johnny's wanderings began at the head of the Susquehanna River. Again, by doing a little research on the internet and Google Earth, I was able to find an approximate match for where Johnny really did begin his career. As close as I can tell, he probably set out in a town very similar to Cooperstown, New York. Continue so on until you reach your final destination. Johnny died near Fort Wayne, Indiana, and that is where my story will end. But for the sake of time, I will only demonstrate these first 3 locations. Next, I wrote exactly what I want my students to read when they visit each of the locations within my trip. I have a title and a brief description of each stage of Johnny's life within the story. And for this Google Lit trip, I decided to focus on some key vocabulary words and also some discussion questions. You may plan your Google Lit trip differently depending on the theme or concepts you want your students to focus on. Each book will suggest an appropriate direction for you to follow as you create your own Google Lit trip. I did this step for each of the places I want my students to visit. Again, a title, a brief description, vocabulary words, and discussion questions. And one more time, a title, description, vocabulary words, and more discussion questions. So now my storyboard is complete. Time to put it all together in Google Earth, and it will be a snap. If you can copy and paste, you are ready for the next step. So I'll see you in the next video.